heart. I will keep you in my.
Good afternoon. It is a huge pleasure to be back for yet another TL Talks. If you have been following us, you know this is my favorite moment of the week. I am completely flattered and honored to be surrounded by such incredible visionaries, icons, professionals, and friends. So thank you so much for joining us. I wanted to first make sure that we understand why we're here and what the objective is. I started these TL Talks in April, and my goal was really just to bring out a little bit of positive energy, some optimism, and try to inspire our industry. It's been, such a roller coaster ride, and I felt that so many of my friends were stuck, scared to speak, feeling a little bit frozen and overwhelmed. And I thought, well, if I can get some friends together and just get a movement of positive energy, and I can get one person out of bed, then this is worth it. And I think I got more than one person out of bed. We've had over 20,000 views since we started. It's been an amazing, amazing voyage. I think we've been able to unite old friends, and then I've had great partners bringing new friends, and it's just fantastic. It's just, I think the biggest silver lining for me has been the relationships that this pandemic has given me and these new friendships. So thank you for joining us once again. We have a fantastic global audience. So some incredible travel advisors, ICs, DMCs, hoteliers from all over the world. And I greatly value, for those that don't know me, my name is Diriyah. I am the founder of TL Portfolio, which is a representation and communications company with offices throughout North and South America. We're an all-women's team of 17 amazing women. And I feel that they're part of my family, and they're obviously going to stick through with me throughout this storm. How long it takes, we'll be together. So I am a little bit of everything. I'm Brazilian, European, American. So at least I can speak to and feel a little bit of where everybody's coming from. I wanted to jump in and introduce this incredible panel that I am so flattered to be with. And I'm going to start the conversation by introducing Jackie Gifford. Jackie has a gift, and she's smiling more than anybody because she has a little boy with her. I am sure that's what brings so much joy. Which is fantastic. I told everybody we should be, the idea behind this is a casual conversation between friends. If I could put us all together in a living room and have a chat, that would be the ideal. So it's not a formal Q&A. And I told Jackie, if your son joins us, it's fantastic. So Jackie Gifford, editor-in-chief of Travel and Leisure since November 2008. Though she has been with the leading travel media brand since since November 2018. And she's been with the company since 2013. Prior to that, Jackie worked with several media outlets, including Brides and Vanity Fair. Jackie was born in Japan, raised in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Philippines. She's a graduate of Princeton University.
Sorry, Philadelphia. Not as exciting.
Oh, not as exciting. Sorry, I don't know why we had, but you are very excited with Japan and Saudi Arabia. There you go. Sorry about that. She lives in New York with her husband and clearly her beautiful son. So Jackie, it's so exciting to have you here and all of your family with us. So thank you so much for finding time in your very busy schedule. It's an honor. A very familiar face and a very beloved face, Chris Austin, Senior Vice President of Global Sales and Marketing at Seabourn Cruise Line. I think it is a face that every time I post something, people are like, they just, oh my God, Chris is on the panel. So that's very flattering that you're here, Chris. Chris joined Seabourn in January 2017. Prior to that, he spent 29 years with Starwood Hotels and Resorts. You must have started very young because 29 years. Most recently, he served as Vice President of Global Leisure and Luxury TCM Sales. He was received numerous accolades. I have such a long list. I'm going to pick like 2 or 3. Most Innovative Hotel Executive by U.S. Travel Professional in the TAVI Awards, Best Luxury Hotel Executive Worldwide in 2016, and Top Luxury Sales Executive Worldwide in 2019 by the Luxury Travel Association, and the list goes on. He's a British national and is now relocated from Seattle to Miami, but you're back in Seattle at the moment, right? Okay, got that right.
Yes.
Lovely to have you, Chris. Troy Hayes, President and CEO of Brownell Travel. for over 20 years, recognized as a champion in the travel industry, serves as a thought leader throughout innovation, with bringing innovation to the industry, and being involved in programs such as Virtuoso's Innovation Team, Ritz-Carlton's President's Roundtable, Four Seasons Advisory Board, and the list goes on. He has an MBA from Harvard Business School, and in 2017, Troy was named CEO of the Year by the Birmingham Business Journal. So Troy, it's a pleasure to have you here. Last but not least, the legendary Jerry Inzerillo. Jerry, it's a huge pleasure to have you here, CEO of Diriyah Gate Development Authority and Vice Chairman of Forbes Travel Guide. He is a world-renowned hotelier with a career spanning more than 5 decades. In June 2018, he became the first CEO of the newly created Diriyah Gate Development Authority, a giga project aimed to restore and reimagine the ancestral home of the original Saudi estate. Jerry was CEO of Forbes Travel Guide from 2014 to 2018. He was also president and CEO of IMG Artists. Prior to that, president of Kerzner Entertainment Group, CEO and president of Morgan's Hotel Group, COO of Sun City, and the list goes on. So thank you so much. There's so many accolades to all of you that I could spend 60 minutes just going over all of your biography. So I think the most important thing is that I am so flattered that you're here, that you've agreed to this invitation. And I'm going to start off with a very easy question. And it's a little taste where you could just share with us, if you were to think, what is your biggest takeaway from this situation? You know, if you have to think back, and it could be on a personal and a professional base, what have you learned from it? You know, and just a little taste. Jackie, I'll start with you.
Sure. I think I've learned that slowing down isn't a bad thing. And I've also learned that, you know, there's also a sense of at the same time that slowing down isn't a bad thing, there's also a sense of urgency. So as I look to travel again and get out back on the road, I don't want to put off the trip that I'm dreaming about the most. I don't want to wait to do it, if that makes sense. Like, why wait any longer? If I can go, I'm going to go.
I empathize for some reason. I think we all do. Everybody that's been on the run, you know, just working nonstop kind of sees value in this reality that I think none of us ever fathomed we would be able to do. Jerry, tell us a little bit about your takeaway from this new madness.
Well, two things. First of all, if anybody ever gave out a PhD in positivity, it would go to you, Tina, because there is nobody more positive on earth than you. And the goodness and the positive energy that you radiate, your devotion to the community for so many years now is appreciated by all of us. And to have some time to be with Jackie, you know, she's done an amazing job at Travel and Leisure, although I'm showing my age because her predecessor, Nancy Novograd, has been a friend of mine for, you know, over almost 40 years now. But Jackie's done an amazing job. And to be with Chris and Troy, it's a great honor because they're stalwarts. They're the best in class. So it's a great honor to be with everybody. And I think, you know, one of the big things from this is that we realize that the real definition of luxury now is time. The real definition of luxury now is spending time with people you love. And everybody's going to want to get back out. You know, it shows that humans have to share. They have to encounter. They have to embrace. And the world is a beautiful place. So many countries, so many different cultures that everybody wants to get back out, but it's going to take a little bit more time. So I think everybody has a renewed appreciation, but now people are not going to waste time because they see how valuable it is. And they see how beautiful the reconnection is with their families, their friends, their societies. And we are busy, but now we're appreciating what's real. And this is a good check for all of us. So even though it's painful now, and one can't minimize the loss of jobs and the loss of lives and stuff like that, and one can't minimize that, but we have to keep our spirit high. People will travel again in greater numbers, but time is luxury, and love spreads and positivity spreads much faster than any virus.
Beautifully put. Beautifully put. I couldn't agree with you more. We're all nodding. We're all going, yeah, go Jerry, go Jerry. Yeah, no, definitely. Chris, tell us a little about your takeaway.
Well, thanks, Tina, for the invitation, firstly, and actually everybody who's joined to listen to us today. Thank you so very, very much. And Jerry, thanks for those lovely compliments. And it is wonderful to be with Jackie and Troy and all of you very, very much. Yeah, I think over the last sort of 4 or 5 months, you know, some of the things that I've realized is actually through a virtual world, you can make brand new friendships, and actually you can reinforce existing friendships to be really deep and very meaningful. And I think we all questioned that at the beginning. We all sort of said, oh my goodness, we're not going to be on planes, we're not going to be flying to meetings, we're not going to be sitting at round tables, having lunches, dinners, breakfast, cocktails. I actually learned how to do a virtual cocktail pretty well as well, actually. Maybe we can do another one of these events, Tina, and practice that, actually, because it's 11 in the morning in Seattle, so I don't have a cocktail. Although in your living room, if I physically was with you, I think drinking a Cartagena, yes, in Brazil.
For sure.
But no, I think, you know, this new understanding of how actually business continues and is becoming, you know, very mature relationships are even becoming even maturer and deeper. We're finding opportunities. We're leveraging technology. And, you know, I think, you know, Microsoft with their Teams and whoever owns Zoom, and they must be loving this because we're all leveraging technology. But I think we questioned that at the beginning. And I think it's a huge learning. You know, and as Jerry said and Jackie, you know, we are spending a lot of time working. In fact, in the cruise industry, we seem to be working harder with no guests on a cruise ship than actually when we have full ships. There's a sort of a strange understanding to that factor. But, you know, we are really appreciative of the people in our lives and just spending time. And, you know, I am reaching out to friends. In fact, I'm seeing friends through the virtual platforms more than I ever did before. And it's strange because all of these abilities, even FaceTime, has been around for a long time, but I don't think we leverage them to the point we are now. So, of course,
For sure.
human connection. We do want to get back to travel. You know, we'll talk about pent-up demand, I am sure, numerous times this, you know, during our talk today. But, you know, obviously it's you know, we've learned to do this very well. So, yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think there is an efficiency element. You know, we're somehow being able to do more and connect more because we're not spending so much time trying to get somewhere. And suddenly you realize, do I really have to go anywhere to do all this? You know, it's interesting. There's a big shift going on there. And there's, you know, spending quality time in front of a computer is actually, you connect, you know, it's fantastic. Troy, give us a little bit of your reality.
Well, now you've heard from the three wise ones, so I'll just chime in and pick up with, but following on to what Chris said, I think the thing that resonates so deeply with me is the power and importance of relationships, and that we're seeing it play out in so many different dimensions now, that because we can't be together, we're hungry for that time together, and we're finding ways to connect. But all of us have built years, and certainly in the advisor community, we've spent this time building these relationships within our organization, but also these great relationships around the world. But now the business is slammed to the ground, and some days are really hard. And the ability to have such great relationships to reach out and help each other, and realize that this is going to be a long pull, and leaning into these relationships that we've built over these years during much better times and work through difficulties. We've never had difficulties like this, but the depth of real relationships, both within the advisor community, within the travel industry as partners, and with clients all around, those real authentic relationships are the things that feed us and sustain us through what we're doing now. And they're very powerful.
I couldn't agree more. And that's what bonds us all together in this talk. And it gets people coming back for more. And it's what makes it so much fun. right? It's exactly these relationships. I'm going to start with a question to Jackie, women first. And so I was doing some history and I was reading some past interviews, and I thought it was very interesting because I picked up on an interview you did for FIPP.com in 2019 when you had recently taken over the role of editor-in-chief of Travel and Leisure. And it was interesting because you spoke about the challenges ahead looking at 2019 and 2020. And you talked about, changing the how you cover stories for it to be a little bit more different, for it to be digital, for you to reach a younger audience, and having to think out of the box for the year ahead. So now we think out of the box again, right? So like you've done an amazing job, and now we're looking at a year when everything's changed. And from my past talks, what I've realized that is really a constant change, regardless if you're talking to retail, to media, to hospitality, is that the consumer is looking for a more customized message, to speak to smaller pools, to feel that you're connecting with a community. How do you see, Travel and Leisure doing that? Because do you see change in the horizon, or is it more about sticking to, what you've been doing, which is fantastic?
Oh, thank you. Well, I want to just say too, we're the only, so when the pandemic really, March 13th is the day that the world seems to have changed, right? So we moved everybody to work from home in New York, and we're actually still producing a monthly magazine during this time. We're the only travel magazine that's kept producing. So we've now done 4 issues remotely. And, what we've been able to do, Tina, which I think was really, we started doing this not knowing what the world was going to look like really. And when we started to produce our June issue, we sort of bet on the future, right? We said that the desire to travel is always there. It's, what Troy was saying, what Jerry was saying, what Chris was saying. So the headline was New Horizons, Honoring the Power of Travel and Human Connection. We put that on our cover. And so some stories we moved forward with, knowing that our readers couldn't go anywhere, but they still just wanted to dream. So the magazine continues to be this inspirational dreaming tool. We're still providing lots of service. So as things change, as things develop, like we did a whole issue, story on the national parks in our June, in that first issue, because we said to ourselves, okay, realistically, we think this is going to happen. And luckily it came true. And we saw that everybody started to get back to nature. And so we're slowly starting to get reporters safely back out in the field. But the magazine continues to be inspirational. We're using now local reporters to tell their own stories because we can't get people on planes. So we're using local reporters to tell stories in that market, following all state and local guidelines, safety rules. But so that's actually been really empowering in a way, because we're able to tap into a fairly diverse, huge global contributor network. The magazine continues to get new readers. Digitally, we're seeing a tremendous amount of interest in domestic travel, but then planning for the future years. So to everyone's point, it's like the dreaming. Where do I want to go when I want to take that first trip when I get back out on the road? So we're feeding that need. And then with, we just launched a new podcast, which we produced during the pandemic, that celebrates diversity and inclusion in travel. It's called Let's Go Together. So I guess the answer is, and I know that's not, like, it's a lot to break down. The answer is people still want to travel. We are doing our best to keep up with a rapidly developing situation, knowing that our readers are not coming to us, frankly, for the hard news. And when I say hard news, they're going to, for the latest on the virus and where it is in the world, and they're going to news outlets. They're coming to us to read positive messaging and to dream. So I just, from the beginning, I knew that instinctually, because that's what our brand does. So it was just like doubling down on what our fundamental core mission was, and just doing the best possible work that we can during what is undoubtedly the most challenging time for our business. And it is great. We are getting new readers. I got an email the other day from a 17-year-old subscriber to Travel and Leisure magazine, how much she loves our fonts and our maps. And, that's the sort of beauty of travel, is you're always getting new followers and new readers. So.
No, and I have to mention, because one of the things that got us started with these talks is the fact that the hard news is so negative. It's so heavy. It's so hard to take in morning after morning. Newspaper, TV. It's just like slap, slap, slap. And the fact that you recently decided, and it seems obvious, because we receive it and we all celebrate the awards, and congratulations to Chris and Seabourn, and it's and to so many of our friends and partners that are listening. But the decision to do that, or to cancel, or to think maybe it's not the time, I know it went through your mind, should you actually be having these awards? And I'm so thankful that you did, because it is positive energy. It's a hug. It's like a virtual hug. It's like giving somebody a pat in the back, and giving people energy. And so thank you for doing that. It's definitely the right thing to do. And I think you sent a wave of positive energy and got people motivated and inspired. And it shows that life will come back. It's different, but again, different is not bad. We can learn a lot from it. So kudos to you. Good.
It's our readers survey, and the survey closed on March 6th, right? So before things were changing, but like those experiences. So I sort of said to myself, but like, just because of what's happening now doesn't negate what happened before. Those experiences were real. They were important. Brand loyalty is important. I think that will carry a lot of us through. If your customer loves you and what you do, they're going to come back. They are going to trust.
I couldn't agree more.
Why would we not publish results of brands that people
deserve it,
champion, and they deserve it? So that's,
I think we all agree with you. Happy you went that course. Jerry, I wanted to tap into you. You are you're in a very unique position, and I think it's such an exciting one. It's such a special one, and it's so nice for you to share this with us, because earlier this year, for the first time in 89 years of history, Saudi Arabia opened its doors to foreign citizens, right? Issuing over visas to over 49 countries. It represents a radical change in Saudi Arabia, and you're involved in the creation, the development, the preservation of a whole city. It's like a rebirth of the birthplace of Saudi Arabia. It's amazing. And I think what's especially interesting is, firstly, the magnitude of it, but secondly, you were creating something. You have a massive master plan that is a future project, right? You're not like 90% of the industry. You're not experiencing low occupancy and so forth, because you're still very much in the creation or redevelopment mode, you have a much 2030 vision kind of thing. However, I would love to get your take on the sense of, with all this coming, and you have this master plan, do you continue going as it was, thinking, well, by the time it happens, this will be history? Or are there learnings here and visions and transformations that actually are being adapted into the project?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. Let me just start by saying that, when Jackie said everybody's thinking about what their first trip is going to be when they get back on the road, and they should come and visit us in Saudi Arabia. I mean, that should be on everybody's bucket list.
It is on mine.
And you're most welcome. There's a few very important things. We are very, very lucky at this point. You always count your blessings. But we have to give a lot of credit to, almost all the credit, to the custodian of the two holy mosques, His Majesty the King, and for our dynamic Crown Prince, because they love Saudi Arabia. They should. One family, the Al Sauds, have run this country for 130 years. There's stability, there's continuity, but now there's bold vision. And since His Majesty has been king, and since the Crown Prince has been Crown Prince, they want the world to come and see a country that is vastly beautifully. It's beautiful. The topography of Saudi Arabia is vast. Nobody knows that there's snow in Saudi Arabia and canyons. But the other thing is that it's rich in history, because it's where the Arabian Peninsula started. It's where the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia started, our beloved Diriyah. So what happened is that there is a feeling now that come and see our society, because as beautiful as the country is, the number one compelling reason to come to Saudi Arabia is because the Saudis are such warm-hearted, generous people. Now, they're going to be very surprised. So thanks to the Crown Prince, and thanks to our Minister of Tourism, His Excellency Al-Khatib, and our dynamic Minister of Culture, His Highness Prince Badr, the decision was made to open up the kingdom, as you said, to 49 countries plus Hong Kong and Macau in September. And there was an overwhelming, we were doing 77,000 visas a week. And when people came, it was astonishing what their post reviews were, even on social media. We had no idea this place was so beautiful. And we had no idea that the people were so nice. Well, that's great. Now with Diriyah, we could have every reason now to slow it down and to say, okay, we're gonna slow our development. But that's not the way the Crown Prince operates, because the Crown Prince, who works 80-hour weeks, and he is in all the details, and he loves tourism. He loves welcoming people. He loves gathering people. So we're lucky because we're a UNESCO World Heritage Site, one of 5. Saudi Arabia in the years to come will have many more. So we're 300 years old. So the same way Machu Picchu is to the Peruvians and the Acropolis is to the Greeks and the Colosseum is to the Romans, is what Diriyah is to the Arabian Peninsula and to the Saudis. But the Crown Prince and His Majesty, and understanding that it's a wealthier nation than perhaps that has more resources, we are not interrupting the vision. We are not stopping. And in the board meetings with the Crown Prince, which I'm after I leave you, I'm jumping right across. I'm waiting for the call now. But he says, we will go because we want to return the kingdom to where it was pre-1979, which was a moderate, welcoming nation. That's their vision. It's a beautiful vision. And it's one of the visions why, the wonderful Forbes travel guide, which I love, operating in over 100 countries with the best people in serving our community, to have a chance to participate in history, to open up the kingdom, and to be part of a society that's so positive right now where the rest of the world is very heavy. It's a privilege, but the Crown Prince has said to all of the ministers and all the CEOs, we are going to proceed as what we've agreed to, no slowing down.
Fantastic. No, and that's it's an exciting destination, and I think on the list of many of us.
You're most welcome.
And talking about history, right? I mean, definitely you have plenty of it. Brownell Travel is another company that has a lot of it as well. Yeah, you're 130 years in the business, and I think it was fantastic. When we first talked, you were sharing the history of the company and some stories that go back to the wars and the Spanish flu and all of this, and it survived and it kept going, and there were lessons. And obviously, one of the first questions I asked is there a guidebook that they leave you with some tips? And you said, no, I'm looking for it everywhere, and they didn't leave it. So my question is, considering this company has been through all this, and we're now living history, we're living a moment in history that's going to be studied forever. If you were to write this little guidebook to lead to your next, what would it say?
Tina, one of the great privileges I have in running this company. Can you hear me okay? My
Perfect.
Bluetooth, okay, just cut out. It's 133 years. They started this in 1887. And at the turn of the century, when Dr. Brownell founded, his daughter-in-law ran the business. And so 1900, running the business out of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, taking tours around the world. So, we are in an industry full of really strong and successful women, and the anchoring of our company in that tradition is really pretty spectacular. Since I'm in a 90% female team, I'm surrounded all the time with that kind of incredible talent, and it's in the DNA of our company. But as you look at it, Jenny Brownell, I was reading her journal today. In 1914, she was with a group of Americans entering Berlin the day war was declared on Germany. She entered the day before. She got to the embassy and they told her, you might want to get out. She organizes them, she gets them out. And in her notes, she says she's confident the reason they got out, she got them out to the railhead, And she got all their bags on board. And she said, I tipped the porter on the train a gold coin. I tipped him in gold, knowing that with what's going on, paper currency might not be so valuable. And she said, we changed train 4 times before we got to Amsterdam to get out. All of our baggage made it. And she said she's confident that tipping him in gold was a big part of it. And when I go back to relationships, I go back to one of the great lessons learned in Brownell. We talk about, when I talk about relationships, it is one of the primary things is how you treat the people on the ground who deliver the services to your clients matters. And we like to say at Brownell that we know we've done our job right when our clients say it feels like we send our friends, our clients, to stay with our friends. And we have to treat those relationships in such a way on the ground as we get through this crisis and other crises, so that they are taken care, that they know that we have worked through this together, so that when we do send our clients, that there's that warm and gracious greeting. And it's not just some booking, that it is us and that personal connection, but we have treated them well, and they have treated our clients well, because we have found that does work well. And that's one of the great takeaways. What I've learned looking at 133 years is what's old is new again. You build trust, you build strong relationships, you take care of each other, you treat people fairly. I would say what I have learned is that I would tell everyone is, remember, we're in a highly volatile industry, and always be prepared for the uncertainties and tumult of the industry. I thought, having gone through 9/11, the Great Recession, Gulf War, and being battered through lots of things, we were ready. And of course, this one's greater than any. But that everyone needs to be prepared financially and be prepared emotionally for the fact that we have the great joys of the excitement of the unknowns of the travel industry. Also means we have to be prepared for the uncertainty that it brings. And now is a great time for that, to remember that we will get through this, and we can look out at the horizon and see at some point we'll conquer this, and the demand for travel will come back so strong, and the need for professional advisors will be so strong.
Bravo.
We have to take care of ourselves to be sure that we are strong and healthy, and take care of each other, and have an organization that we've built strong so everybody cares for each other, and we have the tools and care for them. And that's what we learned at Brownell, is these advisors are the key. They have the care and nurturing, and to build the trust with those clients, to be sure they know them well and they have that deep trust, and to build those relationships on the ground. And we're the ones in the middle, and it's hard right now. And so caring for these advisors and helping them care for themselves and to get through to the end is the priority. And that's a lot of what the Brownells have done over the years and taught us. And that equips us to build that trust so that we can survive and be the ones to care for others. And I would say that building trust is essential, and it's never been more essential than it is today. I was reading not long ago that back in the 50s, over 60% of Americans trusted their neighbors. Today, less than 30% trust their neighbors, and millennials trust even less. And let's not even talk about trust in government and how that has changed. So in a world that is devoid of trust, we're in a place as advisors to be a truly trusted source with clients who we know and we love, and we've come to build these relationships over time in their very personal travels in their lives, and knowing their families, etc. Stepping into that place is really so valuable, and we have to be prepared to step in there. But we then become a valuable resource to that client when we do that. And being that trusted advisor is what we've learned from the Brownells, and that will survive through any tumult we have.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's so funny. You said something that resonates to me, which is, sending your friends to stay with friends. And there's so much meaning in the word friends, because it does imply trust. It implies care. It's the closest thing you have to family. So, I worked for the Ritz-Carlton, and it gets stuck in your DNA, the serving ladies and gentlemen, we're ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And bringing that forward to today, it's almost like a modern version of friends, sending friends to stay with friends, because that's almost a bigger hug. It's almost more friendly and more loving when it's a friend. And so I think that will survive, that alone will survive history for the rest of eternity, right? And that's the bottom line of what we do. And
It's
so
that's
beautiful.
the lesson from 133 years. You do that, and here this company is, and so the lesson is, we survived the Spanish flu, we survived 2 world wars, we survived the Great Depression. This company has, and I can't find anywhere that Jenny Brownell talks about the dadgum pandemic, because it's just one of many things. And if you do these things right, you survive all those issues.
I hope you're having a diary as well.
Bravo.
Forget, take notes. Though it's all digital, you can always go to YouTube. But anyway, I'm going to go, Chris. Yes.
Can I just give a quick shout out?
Please.
Not only to Troy, but actually I think to all travel advisors, wherever they are in the world, because, you know, we as suppliers, and I'm just one of many suppliers, you know, the travel advisor, travel professional is critical to our success. And I think at this time, you know, the travel advisor is having a really tough time of it, because obviously, you know, compensation wise, you know, some of us are on reduced salaries, but we still have a salary coming in. But for the travel advisor, many of them, obviously their income is based upon what they sell. And what they're selling to a degree has dried up or slowed down. And I think, you know, we're obviously very aware, everybody's a dreamer, people are moving into planning, and some people are moving into booking, obviously. But, you know, I think the advisor community has been incredibly resilient and incredibly positive at this time. And I just want to give a shout out and commend every single one of you, you know, whether you work for Brownell or anybody. And I know that I've seen a few on the chat, so I'm going to give a shout out to Martin, who I've seen a question coming from. But, kudos to you all. Huh?
Thank you, Chris.
No, and you're totally right. And I think, again, there's always a silver lining, right? So if they were ever as they said, they were threatened by the internet, well, that's old news, right? We've said it over and over. The silver lining is that nobody will ever doubt the need for a travel advisor and the need for, you know, local knowledge and expertise and so forth. So I couldn't agree with you more. Well said. And I'll stay with you, Chris. Again, you also have, you know, Seabourn Cruise Line has been around for over 30 years as well, since 1988. And when you talk about the start of the company, you know, you mentioned that they were in the forefront of innovation at that time, and how, you know, you've managed to stay on top of the game. Obviously, Jackie's accredited you with an amazing award. And so I was just wondering, when you look at the evolution of travel and everything that's happening right now, and how we're, you know, fast tracking and speeding up old trends, and, you know, it seems like we're living years per week here. It's bizarre what we're going through. How do you consider the Seabourn evolving post-COVID, in the sense of, you know, talk about conscious travel, talk about all the things that are happening. How will you maintain that sense of, you know, staying on top of the game, and in terms of evolution?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, actually. And I think, you know, innovation is the DNA of many very, very successful global brands today. And I think one thing I'd like to put in perspective is that, you know, the most simplest idea can become the most significant and hugely impactful initiative for whether you're a small brand or a very high profile global brand. And during that evolution of thinking of the idea and implementation, you may feel very uncomfortable as well. You may feel very awkward, and you may want to give up. But actually, when you push through, again, those simple little ideas can become big things. And I think, you know, when Seabourn began, it was about ultra luxury small ship cruising. It was about all suite accommodations and giving people a real choice in culinary, you know, and where actually we as a brand took our guests to. And, you know, those beliefs of 1988 are still core to the brand today. And I think we've seen in the cruise industry as a whole, innovation coming from many different areas. You know, again, whether it's bringing famous chefs on board to create restaurants, working with, you know, we work with Dr. Andrew Weil, one of the world's sort of gurus in wellness and spa, you know, whether it's partnerships like that, whether it is actually ship design and what you incorporate into the design of ships. And again, you know, different things for different people. That's what makes the world go around. So a lot of the entertainment on board, innovation has been driven through obviously what guests have actually wanted and what have actually asked or sometimes even demanded. I think innovation is where the cruise industry also sails to. Being small, we have the advantage of going to many different and unique locations in the world. And being a Brit and sometimes mispronouncing places, I probably will mispronounce this place. Seabourn was the first to go to Manipupu in the Solomon Islands. And that's famous because that's where Prince William and Princess Kate went for their honeymoon, actually. But, you know, cruise lines have this ability to innovate in the destinations we go to because we move and we can actually find, you know, safe anchorage and obviously go into small little hidden harbors and really open up these very unique, different experiences, obviously for guests around the world. You know, your question's very much forward looking and not really rear view mirror, but I wanted to put a little bit of context around innovation in the cruise industry. Actually tip my hat to, you know, it's a small industry, 33 million guests cruised with, you know, the cruise lines last year. And I think, you know, we like to think 36 million people are eager to come back actually. But all the cruise lines are innovative. I mean, they really, I think, push the boundaries and deliver exceptional experiences. And what everybody is looking at now from an innovative point of view is, so how will cruising look in the future? And I think the answer truthfully is, not sure, don't know. You know, the goal is still to deliver an exceptional experience and exceed guest expectations. Clearly, there's a lot of work being done on health and safety. But I have to say, you know, health and safety and protecting our world and the oceans, et cetera, and sustainability has been the number one focus of all cruise lines, you know, wherever they are in the world, actually. And there's a few innovative initiatives that are taking place, actually. You know, Seabourn is the ultra luxury brand of Carnival Corporation. And so actually on July the 28th, Carnival Corporation are hosting a science summit, and we've got some renowned you know, doctors and scientists from medical field, from, you know, epidemiology, you know, biochemistry, from hospitality, marine operations as well, all coming together. And it's a public forum. Travel advisors can register, you know, past guests, future guests, consumers, anybody, media. Love to have everybody, you know, tune in. And it's going to be a 4-hour session really to continue the conversation as to, you know, how we can help COVID sort of disappear, then also how we can actually build a, you know, an experience where, you know, guests are not worried about health and safety.
Fantastic.
Also, some other brands are doing a very similar thing. I had to write the name down just to get it right, but Health is actually what Royal Caribbean and Norwegian Cruise Lines who have come together, and that's a very similar initiative. And I think one of the beautiful things about this innovative approach is there's none of the cruise lines are going to actually keep the information, you know, private to their chest. Everything is going to be shared. We're going to be very collaborative, very transparent, and then build upon what we learn, which will progress faster. It'll mean that innovative, you know, conversation will actually become something very, very meaningful and actually help shape the future. And yes, there will be
fantastic
change, but we don't really know today what they will be.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I think that we're feeling this in many markets, that people who, you know, the environment that used to be very competitive and very egoistic almost is becoming more and more generous, right? And it's like, you know what, in order for me to survive, we need everybody. You know, I can't get out there and be alone and I'll get nowhere. There'll be nobody around because we're a chain, right? We need all of us at the end of the day. So that's a fantastic, again, a great thing that's coming out of all of this. Jackie, I wanted to come back to you with the sense of, you know, this creativity that you have. And I think what I mentioned in a previous panels, one of the best ways to predict the future is to invent it, right? And so we see a threat in a way to the world of arts and music and sports and in general entertainment, right? There is currently a fear of large collective movements, especially indoors. And when you look at, you know, you're in New York, some of the most incredible museums, collections of art and so forth that are currently not being able to be enjoyed because of this, of how they're currently experienced. If we were to imagine a future where, there is no doubt there's a hunger for travel, there's a hunger for art, there's a hunger that's going to remain and it's part of what we do. How do we bridge this gap? Can you imagine what this future is going to be for us to be able to, vaccine or not, be able to enjoy New York museum art?
A couple things real quick. I'm conscious of time. I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to keep talking. So I live in New York City. I'm very passionate about New York, like having lived in, at the epicenter of the epicenter at one point. So I think a couple things, right now we're seeing this sort of return to nature outside, all that, right? Acknowledge it, fine. I think we should also start thinking big picture, though, that, the places that, like New York, like Milan, any urban center of culture, the reason the virus spread there, frankly, is because people loved it. They were there. They're high density areas because people love them. They're thriving places for music and culture and arts. And so,
and energy.
As a job, as a travel industry, I have a job to sort of, frankly, flip that thinking, because if you recognize that the virus is truly everywhere, it doesn't really matter where you are in the world, then New York just becomes another great place. And so you have to I'm trying to, I'm sitting here. If I could fly to Paris tomorrow, I would. So, we have to sort of start to flip that conversation. And so when you speak about the arts and culture and theater, this is frankly something that people travel for. So what does that look like? Does it mean that we, I have this crazy idea that, in the wintertime, maybe somehow we can transform every avenue, like, do a rotating thing, heat lamps outside, how, take people's temperature. Maybe at that point you can do an instant coronavirus check and you can have an impromptu pop-up theater performance on the streets of New York City. Do we start rethinking urban spaces? Do we need to, get rid of more cars in cities so that we can, have more outdoor spaces for pedestrians? And, it's great that we're living this world virtually. Chris is right. I've never been more in touch with some people, but to me, like a museum experience, it's fine to do it virtually, but there's nothing more powerful than seeing a piece of art in person. We're seeing art festivals and galleries, they're doing everything they can. Like Frieze had an amazing art fair this spring. But you have to engage with that art. For just to sit there and for nobody to ever see it in person seems like a waste. So I think we need to, the private sector and the creative sector and the public sector need to come together to think about capacity controls, how we're going to do this safely. And it's really a global effort, I think, and we should learn from countries that have done things well in the past, and move forward and not abandon these institutions. This is our heritage. So, and I'd be curious because Jerry's now building this, right? So it's like, you can think about it both ways, right? Like everybody needs to come together to just frankly make sure that art doesn't go away.
No, and it's exciting. It's exciting to imagine New York at some point with, again, and it kind of makes sense. It's almost like we're leading there, right? If we don't have to take our car to go to work every day because we can do a lot of our work from home. So we kind of disrupt this movement that it's always been. Everybody gets up in the morning, 9 o'clock, you have to be in the office, 5 o'clock you finish, then you get the traffic home. We've been working like it's terrible, but it's almost like everybody moves in the same direction. And if we break that, and there's no need to be in traffic, and there's no need to live in the city so much, then our whole, the whole way cities are built flips. And the idea of having streets that could be open air museums and another avenue that can be a theater, and that starts to become realistic, whereas it would have never been yesterday when it was traffic all day long, right? So I think
offices aren't as, it's all, and look, it's just the conversation needs to be had. If we're not going into the office anymore and the remote work thing really truly takes hold, what do those spaces become? Does Manhattan need another luxury high-rise apartment tower? Probably not right now. So in space, instead of that, what could we do to reimagine the city with more green space? This is the reality that we're living in. And if we don't have these conversations now, I don't know when we were already having them before. It's just accelerated it, frankly. So
Yeah, but it's accelerated now in a completely different scenario, right? Because you were having it before where you would have thought, yeah, but there's major traffic at that time, so that can't happen. And how, when would you ever imagine that situation without it, right?
yeah, so here we are.
Yeah, no, it's very, very exciting. And I think that creative motivation is the best part out of everything. Jerry, I'm going to go back to you. 50 years, 160 countries, from being a busboy in banquet rooms to all of these accolades and being around the world. You did a TED Talk where you mentioned an old Native American saying that you cannot stop running water, right? And that when you work with your heart and you do what you do with passion, then you don't have to worry about the outcome, because only good things can come out of there. Now, you've dedicated your life to the travel industry, to hospitality. You've achieved amazing things, and yet somehow our travel industry is frozen. The water did stop flowing somehow. We're stuck. And I would love to hear from you, as a guru in travel. How do you keep these travel agents, hotelier, to continue to feel the passion for service? How do you motivate an industry when we're stopped in time? It's a big question for a big man.
Well, I thank you. And it's simple in some respects. And that is, the Native Americans, I love that saying that you can't stop running water. And if we use that same metaphor, the water hasn't dried up. It's not the way of looking at it. It's just it's being pooled now. It's being blocked. It's being reservoired. You cannot change human nature. There's going to be very substantial lessons that are learned out of this, because people are going to say, what is really important in my life now? Now that's going to allow very thoughtful people, and I work for one, which is the Crown Prince, to say, what is the role of the modern city? How do we keep Hong Kong, New York, Paris, London? How do you keep them special, but now adapt to a more human way of doing things? This whole trend about being outside, another gigantic trend, authenticity, because people realize now that luxury is time. Luxury is, things have changed. We got into a point of view, especially with decentralization of air, deregulation of air, where I can go anywhere I want, anytime, it'll always be there. Everybody's questioning that now. So what I've learned is that human nature is the same. Shakespeare, obviously one of our greatest writers, and far be it from a busboy from Brooklyn to quote Shakespeare, as I say in my TED Talk. But Juliet says to Romeo, the more I give to thee, the more I have. There is a pooling now of the human spirit that's going to want to get out, but they're going to thrive, and they're going to want to see things that are authentic. People are not going to have time for fake stuff and nonsense and superficiality, because now let me go and see what's real. I want to see the real cultures, where culture started. I want to interact with people to say, like my pal Sting says, we may not share the same ideology. And Lord knows so many countries are so polarized with politics. But as Sting said, we may not share the same ideology, but we share the same biology. And we share positivity, and we share the need to interact. And, like you say, I've been around a long time. And, when you listen to someone like Troy, how could you not feel? I mean, you could feel his pain of caring for his people so much. You talk to Isidore Sharp, one of my mentors, hired me in 1981 to Four Seasons. And people say, well, Mr. Sharp, you built one of the great luxury hotel companies of all time, Four Seasons Hotel. What's the solution? How did you do it? You know what I'll tell you? I did it by the golden rule. And I wanted my guests to be happy. Do unto others as you would want to do unto have done unto you. But I knew that if my employees, if my staff weren't happy, If their self-esteem wasn't there, if they didn't feel respected and motivated, I would never have happy guests. And that's the whole Brownell formula. It's the whole thing that Chris has devoted his life to, certainly Jackie, certainly you, Tina. So after 50 years, I feel younger, more positive. We're gonna get over this thing. And the water hasn't dried up. It's welling up, it's pooling. And when we come up with a cure, and we will, we've overcome more difficult things. When the vaccines come, when everybody realizes how to take care of themselves and their societies. One little thing, and I don't want to dictate too much time, but we in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia have the honor and the privilege of being the host of the G20 this year. We've had G20 of virtual reality. We're going to have it hopefully in November. We've had our Minister of Tourism, His Excellency Ahmed Khatib, held a meeting with the tourism ministers of the top 20 countries to come up with initiatives to jumpstart global travel. But what happened was when the virus came out, His Majesty the King said, it doesn't matter if you're Saudi or not Saudi. It doesn't matter if you're even here legally or illegally. We're going to pay for all of your COVID tests. We're going to pay for all your medicine. We're going to pay for all your hospitalization, because this time it's about humanity. It's not about politics. So what's going to happen is people are going to appreciate this is a reboot. It's a reset for what's important, but it will never change the human desire to go, to see, and especially the young ones that don't need posses, and they can catch up with like-minded people, and they can post on social media fabulous images. So now we do need a bit of sobriety. We do. And we have to be realistic to think it's going to be a bumpy 12 to 18 months before travel patterns go back to what they are. So we just have to figure out a way to invest in ourselves, learn, build relationships. That's the big thing that every panel member has said. But it's going to be, we have to figure out how to stay in the game. We have to figure out how to work with governments, how to borrow money, how to have stimulus. We, as those of us who are in executive leadership, we have to ask our governments. Now, we've had no issue in the kingdom. We've laid nobody off because we have good leadership. But we have to go to the countries and say, until the travel industry, 1 out of every 10 jobs, 10.6% of global GDP, you have to support us as an industry, because if you don't, it's not only damaging economically, but it's damaging to the human spirit. And this we have to have a bigger picture. So we have to remain vigilant. We have to remain strong. We have to remain positive. The water has not gone away. It's being reservoired. So we just have to have the patience, get the reservoir open, and then it will flow again.
Couldn't agree. Yeah, beautifully put. And thinking about water, I just think back to a talk I had with Troy some time ago. You're a sailor, and you brought in a great illustration of what the situation is. And I'd spoken about it to many people, so I have to tell the story here. But you panned it out beautifully as a sailor, that you feel stuck in the ocean in a beautiful boat, and the wind is gone. And when you're in a boat and the wind is gone, you can row, but you won't get that far, and you can't, no matter how much we try. And I think at the beginning of all this, we all try to huff and puff into the sail to get this, boat going, but suddenly you realize that you can't blow enough wind to really get all the boats moving again. And that, you talked about how, okay, well, you start to fix the boat, and you start talking to your neighbors, and you go for a swim, and you make the best out of it. And I thought it was such a beautiful way to look at the situation. And, with that in mind, I know that you've been studying a lot, the different generation movements, from the boomers to the Gen X and to the millennials. And so as you're stuck in your boat and you know about all these different generations around you, right? And you're fixing your boat and you've given up blowing the sail. What do you envision that needs to be transformed, changed, reinvented to be able to communicate with these different groups? Because they're all very unique. And so because you've invested so much time in learning and studying about them, I'd love to hear your take on it. As a sailor.
As a sailor, as we're sitting in the boat, watching the sails sort of flap.
Yeah.
It means we have time together. Our approach at Brownell is very much about having everyone understand themselves and equip each of us to understand each other. Because everyone wants to be known and loved for who they are and placed in a role where they can use those gifts and talents in a way that they have joy in the work they do. They're doing their very best work, and recognize that we all have gifts, we all have weaknesses. And to build a team where we are sitting alongside people who have strengths to pair with us that cover our weaknesses, so that the travel advisor is a great example. When I started in this business back when I was a consultant living in Boston back when Jerry was general manager back in Dallas. And I would look at it, and I would go and work doing consulting for a national agency. And the travel agent job was awful. It was terrible. So I decided to get in the business. I still haven't figured out how I decided to jump in that trend. But I looked at it and I said, because these people are having to do sales work, relationship work, and then they have to do all the technical work. So understanding how you build people who do sales work and people who do technical work, those are two different parts of the brain. And you have to build a team around, so everyone does more, 1 + 1 makes 3 or 4 when you separate those jobs, because that old travel agent had to do both and they were miserable doing both. So understanding millennials and boomers, it's not that hard. People are people. They're a little bit different in context, but if we embrace the millennial for knowing them for the gifts and the talents of that generation, well, the boomer wants, or the Xer, we all have different talents, and let's embrace what they bring to the table and let them show us, because there's certain things that we do well. The experience, what the millennial wants is an experience. What the boomer has is experience. Have them share that experience, but have the millennial show up in a way that we share it, not cramming it down their throat, but we share it by collaborating together. So they help us share our experiences on media or whatever it may be, and they learn in that process. And at the same time, we learn how to share in an environment. We embrace and validate their gifts, and they embrace and validate ours. And that builds a team, and that builds joy, and that builds a great place to work.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's that collaboration that is so key, for sure. I'm going to ask the last question, Chris, in a short manner, because we're running out of time. But I wanted to ask you, because it's kind of like the elephant in the room always when we talked about the future of cruise. When you talk to somebody that doesn't cruise, they're thinking, my God, who would cruise? I mean, of course, with everything that's happening, nobody's ever going to cruise again. It's almost like when people don't travel and they come to me and think, oh my God, do you really think travel's going to come back? I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, there's a million of us here just dying, to go anywhere. So, whoever doesn't enjoy that experience is obviously more, less understanding of the fact that there are millions and millions of people dying to get there. How do you bridge these two, from the non-cruisers to the cruisers? I know this is not the first time you asked this question, but is there, and it's not so much about Seabourn, but how do you get people to appreciate and value this?
That was a great question, actually. And luckily we have great partners in Jackie and Travel and Leisure, because she writes wonderful stories about the power of cruising. And, storytelling is our best asset, isn't it, actually? Having our loyal guests tell the experience to others is actually how you organically, grow your base. Huh? But the reality of it is, I think, as well, cruising is not a one size fits all. Cruising is just like deciding where you're going to buy your clothes, where you're going to buy your suit or something. You match, and this is what Troy and all of his advisors do. They match the right brand to the right client, and you have to ask the questions. You have to know your client, and you have to match that right brand. Same in the hotel industry, many, many examples, yes. And I think a lot of people perhaps have the wrong idea of cruising, because they're not necessarily doing the homework to match that right brand to themselves. And again, if you want all of the razzmatazz and the excitement and everything else, of course, a cruise will give you that. If you want some more sophistication, you want discovery, and you want authentic experiences, then a brand such as Seabourn, and there are others, will also give you that. We have a wonderful relationship. In fact, we are the official cruise partner to UNESCO. And Jerry, it's great to know that, you know, Saudi obviously has 5 UNESCO, you know, World Heritage sites, and being the official partner, that means that together we collaborate and we help preserve the over 1,000 plus, you know, UNESCO World Heritage sites around the world. We actually take our guests to 470, well, they have options of 470 tours across about 170 locations, UNESCO sites.
Amazing.
We actually raised over the last 5 years about $1.2 million, which we've gifted to UNESCO. And that money actually goes to help train site managers to actually improve and understand how they actually manage a UNESCO site. So, you know, we're doing our part to protect World Heritage. Obviously, we're also doing our part to take our guests to, you know, these sites, but also to unlock unique destinations. And I think, again, for that guest who's never cruised, it's not just about the experience on the sea, on the ocean. It's so much more. It's about the experience on land. You know, we're port intensive. We look for these unique, you know, destinations, hidden harbors. We were the first brand, actually. Many cruise lines go to Hawaii. Seabourn was the first brand a couple of years ago to actually go to the island of Lanai and anchor and offer wonderful day experiences in this gorgeous, beautiful little island, which actually only has 2 beautiful luxury Four Seasons hotels on. But, you know, we took our guests there. And I think if those non-cruisers sort of open their mind to try to match the right brand to them, look for those unique experiences that they want, they'll find actually that it's the best vacation experience actually that anybody can have. Hopefully I answered your question a little bit.
No, you did. And I think there is an element here that, you know, as people reinvent themselves and especially the travel advisor community, there's a big market there that if you're not tapped into it, there's an opportunity to tap into somebody. And there's a contact of somebody on this panel that can teach you from A to Z how to do it. Actually, there's a few of them on the panel. There's all around me, you know. So I think you do answer my question. And I wanted to wrap up the way that I always do. I always end our talks in the same way, that if everybody that's listening to us were to forget everything that was said, what's the one message you want them to remember? You know, what's the takeaway that will carry them through the weekend and give them that push, that energy, that drive to believe that the light will come and know that travel will be back, and it will be back because we have each other. And together, you know, we're going to be stronger and we're going to be more efficient and we're going to be smarter and we're going to have learned so much. As Jerry mentioned, you know, it's a moment to learn. Let me start with Troy. What would you leave as your takeaway, or actually your final message?
To look at the history of travel and to know that pandemics have come and gone in the past. And here we are. Travel was explosive, and there had been the Spanish flu. And by the way, they never had a vaccine. They never really understood exactly what it was. It just played itself out. And there we were 90 years later with tremendous travel. So it will happen. We don't know when, but it will. So we have that undying hope, and we know, and when it recovers, it will be explosive. And in the advisor community, the advisors are going to be key. And the advisor needs to be healthy. The advisor needs to be well informed, and they need to be in a position to be that great trusted advisor. So right now, this is a gift of time to take care of themselves, to build their relationships, and to be strong, and to use that time, not to fret, not to worry, not to stress, and to take that time and take care of themselves and take care of their network and invest in themselves and the network and talk to their clients and just pick up the phone. Don't sell. This is a wonderful time to do what we've always wanted to do. Just pick up the phone and talk to the clients, because several of those conversations, not selling, you'll then learn what it is they do want to do. So when the water breaks, and it will break, and starts crashing in, you'll be ready and well equipped and well informed to then deal with it in a productive and efficient way, in a profitable way as a productive advisor.
Well put. And when you say take care of yourself, I just got that beautiful image, you know, when you're on the plane and they give you that little video of when the mask falls and they say, put the mask on yourself first before helping the other, you know? And it's kind of that image of like, take care of yourself, make sure that you're growing, that you're healthy so that you can take care of your customers when they're ready to go. And it's so nice to think about that image on the plane. Suddenly I was like, oh, how nice.
And don't worry about what you can't control. Just pay attention to what you can control here. Turn off the television and don't watch the news.
That's true. You can watch the TL Talks, but not the news. So I'm going to go to Jerry. Jerry, tell us a little bit about what is your message that you would want people to remember.
Well, I want to finish by how I started, by thanking you, Tina. You're just a beam of positivity, and to have the privilege to be with Jackie and Chris and Troy, this did so much for my own self-esteem and my own positivity to be around such great people. So thank you, everyone. Now, what I would say, without repeating what my wonderful colleagues have said, is that it's also a time for us to understand not just the power of positivity, we talk quite at length about that, but the power of empathy, the power of generosity of spirit, the power of tolerance. And maybe in this moment, we would consider someone else's point of view and someone else's opinion and not just dismiss it. Maybe now what we have always done as a travel community, we've always been global. Maybe now it's for us to spread our message to everybody. Maybe it's now to be more considerate and to be tolerant and open-minded to other people's opinions, even if we don't agree with them. And now it's a time, this is a reboot. This is time to rediscover our humanity and the better angels in all of us. We will. Now, considering how large we are as an industry, we've always been close. Whenever one segment of the industry has struggled, the rest of the industry has come to the support. We've always been one community. We will get through this. We always have. But now it's a chance to, in solidarity, keep each other strong, keep each other positive. And that's why I'm super grateful, Tina, that you took the initiative. It's one thing to think about something. It's another thing to have the courage and the perseverance to organize it the way you do. And you deserve a lot of credit and gratitude from all of us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm flattered, and they're beautiful words. I think these, when we try to sum up what we're going through, it's so emotional because it taps on to all of our, fears and, everything that we're feeling right now, which is, it's confusing at times. But I think what you say, it's about sticking together and waiting it out a little bit. Jackie, tell us your message. And thank you for that, Jerry.
You might hear a small child in the background somewhat, so I'll keep
this. That's beautiful noise. That's the most pure and genuine energy there is.
He's playing rocks in an apartment. To just quickly follow up on what Jerry said, I read something recently that I thought was great. There's listening to respond and listening to understand, and those are two very different things. So I actually think if we did more listening to understand, which is what our industry actually does best, if we did that as an industry, we led the way globally, I think we could all get to a better place.
Very true. There's wisdom in listening to understand for sure, growing from it. Chris, I left it to you to take it home. No pressure.
No pressure, no pressure. Well, actually, it's very inspiring for me to listen to, Troy and Jerry and Jackie. And of course, I just echo Jerry's sentiments. Tina, thank you so much for bringing us all together and allowing us to have a conversation in your virtual living room. I actually am going to keep on this theme of time because, whether we think we have a lot of it or we have none of it, we actually do have time. And using time to actually research, and Jackie, I think you were sort of giving a big nod to this as well, but research so you actually understand the facts is so important. I find that, the facts aren't always true. I mean, I was, a little horrified this week that I was reading about, people will stay nameless, yes, but I think you'll all know who I talk about. That this whole thing has been prefabricated and it's all false and it's fake. And you think, my goodness, you know, if anybody buys into that, so do your research, you know, understand the facts. But I think really do never, ever stop dreaming. And air travel industry will be back. And we'll be back actually, I think, bigger and stronger. Yes, with perhaps a few little differences and maybe some big differences, but that's all going to be good. And just as we learned about how to go through TSA lines in the United States differently, we will learn and we'll accept how to approach traveling in the future as well. But we will be back. And I know there's so much pent up demand to return to travel as well, you know, in a big way, that I think, Jerry, you know, your dam will break and it will be, your reservoir will break and it'll be quite a fast return, we hope so, and a very successful 21 and beyond. But thank you, Tina.
No, thank you. And I wanted to thank all of you for your time, for your energy, for your honesty and your transparency. I greatly value. For those that listen to us, again, thank you. I have to send a shout out to Nancy Novotny, Nancy Novogratz, who put me in touch with so many of you. Jackie's on, that introduced me to Chris a few months ago. Jean-Luc Naret, who also, you know, tied the knot with Jerry, and so many of our friends that are just building upon these relationships. And if I could give one suggestion, is build on relationships, connect people. You know, the more you connect new people, the more it makes you stronger. And that's part of the generation of this new movement of being generous with your contacts. You know, give people the gift of getting to know each other, and you know, that's so invaluable. And all of you, it's been a pleasure to have, you know, you in this talk. I look forward to staying in touch. I wish you a wonderful weekend, and I'm sure we're going to see each other very soon in person. So kisses to all, virtual hugs. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And thanks for everybody for tuning in.
See you all.
Thank you.